Hey guys, I'm Fancy,
And I'm Colleen.
and this is Murder by Design. Hey guys, welcome back to our Monday night crime of the month. We have been talking about the Chicago mob and the one FBI agent who took her down. But before we get into that tonight, we wanted to do some updates on the Suzanne Morphew case that we talked about over the weekend. There has been some developments. We had Ellen Killeran on from Crime Online on Friday night to talk about this case, and she told us that there was going to be a search over the weekend, and it lasts until Tuesday. There's been some updates on that case. They actually have had some cadaver dogs like hit on the scent of human remains. Now, the FBI has supposedly been called in, but no human remains have been turned up as of yet. However, her brother Andy has said a couple of things that are a little different than that, but as far as law enforcement is telling us, and we cannot confirm anything more than that, is that yes, there were cadaver dogs that hit on a human scent. No, there have not been any remains found yet. So
And it's super exciting. Like we just talked about this on Friday where we didn't know they were just doing these searches and the issues with the husband not wanting people on the property. And I guess now we know why. And it's just speculation. But when a cadaver dog hits, those dogs are trained. They don't pick up on the scent of like a dead deer or a dead rabbit or dead animal of any kind. Those are human remains smell. That's no other dead animal. It's dead human. So hopefully some promising leads where they could potentially find her maybe hopefully this week or at least next week.
Right. So, according to Andy Mormon, who is her brother, he organized a large-scale volunteer search that began on Thursday, and he told KDVR that the cadaver dogs had picked up on the scent of human remains on a piece of land owned by Barry Morphew in Poncho Springs, about 20 minutes from the couple's home in Maysville. And it's not clear from either report when he purchased this property or if it had been previously searched by investigators. So, it's a breaking news kind of thing right now. We're just getting little trickles of information coming in. So as we are able to, confirm some things, then we will be updating you guys here and on our Facebook page and Instagram accounts and those things. So
that's exciting. I'm interested. It's very similar, like the Valos, it took them a while to get, warrants and searches, but they did find them.
Boswell's too. I mean, the Boswell case too.
Yep.
So it's been,
Well, and it makes me interested, like with the chlorine, because that was like there's a high, smell of chlorine. Did he try to dissolve her body? If he had chlorine chemicals for his landscaping, did he try just similar to like the Valos? They tried burning the daughter. Tylee.
Well, and that could be the reason why there's not human remains, but the dogs did hit on that scent, because if the remains aren't actually there, but let's say that he had a dead body and he was trying to do whatever he did to it, if he put it in lye or did something with bleach or whatever, and he didn't actually bury her there, if he did something else, then that would be why the cadaver dogs would hit on it, but we wouldn't find remains necessarily. So, I mean, I do think it is a great lead. They said that there's let me see what else I want to make sure I get it right. It says there have been a handful of potential leads that have been pursued as a result of the search. However, nothing has been identified as related to Suzanne's disappearance. Investigators will not comment on specific leads being investigated or other information connected with the case. So they are still playing this pretty close to the chest. They're keeping it kind of under wraps. But, I think that is really smart because it's exactly what they did with the Vallow case, and they didn't make announcements evidence until they really had found something. Same thing with the Boswell case,
Yep.
you know. So I just think that investigators are playing this a little closer right to the chest right now because of all the things that are going on. They want to make sure that they actually get it right. You know, they don't want any chance for this to go to court and be thrown out for some reason.
Well, and they did in Colorado. They're in Colorado. They did the same thing with Gannon. You know, we were like, if she killed him there, where's the evidence? Well, they had the evidence. They had a crap ton of blood evidence in that room.
Yeah, they just had not announced it. So I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't doubt that we will hear something eventually that is maybe that they had some stuff and they just didn't announce it. You know, but yeah,
this is a good developing lead.
Yes, it is. It is. And you're right, Fighting Crime 247. He is trying very hard to bring her home. It's such a sad little case all the way around. And it's so odd because it's just they don't fit the mold for anything like this. I mean, they've been married for ages. There was nothing going on that anybody knew of. The only thing that has been suspected that I have heard about was some sort of money situation. And that's the only reasoning I can find that is even remotely reliable information as to why this might have happened. But
I hope somebody's got an eye on him.
Yeah, I do too. I hope so too. I'm sure they do. I mean, even if they haven't announced him as a suspect, does not mean that he is not a suspect in their eyes. It just means they're not announcing this. So, you know, we've still got a ways to go, but at least we're getting closer to an answer in this case. So anyway, though, we're going to go ahead and get into our crime of the month. So last week, we introduced you to the world of the Chicago mob. We discussed how it controlled literally the whole country and even a lot of the world, and is far more dangerous than all 5 families in New York's mafia operations. Well, tonight, we're going to be discussing the rise of Elaine Smith in the FBI and Ken Eto in the Chicago mob and how the two became to pass.
And so we talked about Elaine Smith in our intro brief snippet about what we were going to be talking about. But Elaine Smith, wonderful, wonderful woman. If you speak with her and if you listen to our interview with her, her voice does not sound so much as the tough badass that she really is. So she started off at the FBI after her husband became an agent, encouraged her to join him. They were actually teachers before joining the FBI. Her husband, Tom, and her became the first couple in the FBI. And obviously they were married before they joined, but still first couple at the FBI. And then she began her career doing background investigations, low-level intelligence, like, you know, most starting level FBI agents. However, she grew up in Chicago and was always interested in the mob. She aspired to work the crime syndicate so much that she began studying the supervisors for that division.
Right. And so she eventually found one that seemed like he was receptive to women agents, which a lot of them were not, you know, because this is back in the time where FBI agents are just now allowing women in. They started allowing women in when Hoover died. So up until Hoover's death, no women were allowed in. After Hoover's death, they began letting them in. And so she approached him and she asked him to breakfast. And he was a bit taken back because he'd never been asked to breakfast by a woman ever, especially a married woman. But he agreed. And so she told him at breakfast that she wanted to join his organized crime unit. He took it back to the squad and allowed the entire squad to vote on whether she should be allowed to join. And I think that's like super crazy. Like, can you imagine like going back to your boss, you know, to your team and being like, hey guys, so I want to vote on whether Colleen can actually join us or not. Can we all decide? Because she's a woman and I'm just not quite sure we want that. Do you guys want that? Are you guys going to be okay with the boys' locker room being shared? You know, like, you know, it's like,
well, it's a lot of the argument of like, well, women in politics, well, having women hormones, periods, what hormones, not allowed.
What? Oh my God. She might decide to, you know, kill somebody just because they tick her off, you know, like.
I think man's periods are worse than female periods.
I do too. I totally do too. But
women know how to handle their shit.
She's like a total badass. I can't wait for you guys to hear her actual interview with us. She is amazing. And she did so much more than just this work. Like, we get into a lot of that with her in our interview, which we will be having released next week with our last episode on this. You know, she did a lot of work in crimes with money laundering and
post 9/11 terrorists
post-9/11,
watching
right,
the money transactions.
accounts and things like that. I mean, she is phenomenal.
Badass. Gun in
Just
her Gucci.
Yep, gun in her Gucci, so, and that is her book. And by the way, guys, in our show notes, there is a link to her book. I highly, highly recommend you go grab it. And of course, we do get a little bit of a kickback from that from Amazon, but it's at no cost to you guys. And it's how we keep doing what we're doing. I mean, along with like our Patreon account and our super chat and our super stickers, which we always have available on here, but it's not, you don't have to do it. It's just greatly appreciated. But yeah, The Gun and the Gucci, though, oh my God, what a great book. I can't begin to tell you how exciting that book is. So, but when Elaine first joined the team members basically wanted her to do the work they weren't particularly interested in doing. They wanted her to work on several Title III cases that they had going. And for those of you who don't know what a Title III is, when law enforcement wants to obtain judicial authorization for intercepting wire, oral, and electronic communications, such as a telephone conversation and emails.
And so now after 9/11,
Colin, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Hello? Can you
There
hear
you
me?
are. You're back. You're back.
Post 9/11, there was a law that was passed that allowed the FBI to bypass that regulation where they could just tap in for national security reasons. I believe it still exists, but it's not supposed to be used. So it just was used this summer. But back then required the official warrant kind of obtaining. And so she actually worked with another woman agent, surprise, another woman, and these Title III cases for months. And that other female agent went on to be a SAC and an associate director. But they sat on these cases basically doing what the men thought was secretary type work for quite a while. They just sit and listen to hours and hours of taped conversations and live conversations through wiretaps. They had to be able to identify the speakers, etc., what they were talking about. And they had to try to decipher the coded messages the speakers use. And if it's not about anything crime related, they have to switch it off and on.
Yeah, so they have to try and figure out if it's actually crime related when they're talking about pizza and girls going to the high school, whatever, I mean, so whatever codes they were using, they had to try and decipher if, there was actually like something being talked about or not. So it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of hours. In the Scott Peterson case, there were 60,000 hours of wiretapped conversations.
Oh my gosh.
Imagine having to listen to all of that, just trying to pick up, is there a crime in what they're talking about? And just having,
no,
it's so boring.
And just so you know, guys, she mentioned Scott Peterson again. So we are finishing up our Scott Peterson thing. I'm so very sorry that we had to pull them down. There was a corruption in the files. We have fixed the first episode. Unfortunately, Colleen and the girls are going to have to re-record Colleen's episode. Mine is finally fixed as well, but I'm waiting for Colleen's to get re-recorded, and then we're going to do our fourth one. And so I'm really excited about all of that. And so we are wrapping that up right now. So if you guys were waiting for that, you should go back over to the Good Wives Guide to True Crime on any major podcast player or at madgenterentertainment.com and go and check out our Scott Peterson information. So, but eventually Elaine was given a case that nobody really felt was going to go anywhere. And they had been working on it supposedly since 1959. Now, this is the 80s. Okay. And since they'd been working on it since 1959, but when she was assigned, there were only about 25 pages in the file. So, really hard work that they were putting in on this case.
Decades of hard, laborious
work. Yes.
These men are so struggling.
All right, guys. So we wanted to take a moment here and talk about one of our affiliates. As you know, everything we do here on Murder by Design and our podcast is all on a volunteer basis. So we appreciate your support through Super Chat and Super Stickers, and those of you that support us in Patreon or our yearly membership club. Affiliate companies are another way that we can make a little money so we can keep doing what we're doing and bring you more great content.
With all of us being mostly homebodies these days, with the pandemic running around and all these other things, it's been a great to find easy ways to continue doing our daily lives. That doesn't mean we have to go out all the time. And so we've been using Instacart, and it's truly, especially in my case, been a lifesaver. I can order all the things I need from my local grocery stores, membership clubs, and even novelty stores. Everything is delivered most of the time within hours of placing in your order, so it's convenient for those times you forgot to plan dinner. And as Fancy knows, that happens a lot.
Absolutely, it does. In fact, that happened tonight. So right now, if you refer your friends, you can earn money as well. So it's a great service. Our link to join is in the show notes. And remember, guys, this helps support us with no cost to you. But getting back into this case, so we're going to kind of get into a little bit about Ken Eto now. So Ken Eto came from an American-Japanese family. He was born in California before World War II. His father was a born-again Christian and very, very strict. And his parents actually did immigrate here from Japan. So Ken actually ran away at the age of 13. It's been alleged that that his father actually beat the children a lot. So Ken kind of ran away and lived on the streets. He ran the rails for many years and supported himself by being a card shark. And he realized early on he had a sort of photographic memory and he could remember cards really well.
And so I was actually just going to ask this, but so his family had immigrated here, and like many of the American Japanese families during World War II, they were sent to internment camps. We were, not just at war with Germany and the Allied, but Japan was part of those Allied powers. And so he really developed his skill with cards in those camps, as it was one of the only ways to pass around the time. And in 1959, the family was released, and then Eto made his way to Chicago.
Right. And so he really figured out through playing hundreds and hundreds of games of poker while stuck in these internment camps that he had a skill. So he was released in 1959 and he actually arrives in Chicago, and he quickly caught the eye of the mob because they realized that he was really a heavy hitter in this stuff and he was really good. So nobody really is able to run any type of gambling operation without the mob's approval. So the mob organized high stake games. And they liked having Eto there because they knew that Eto would have to pay a tribute to them of all of his earnings, which was up to 50% of what he was getting. So these games, so these are games where Eto began to really get involved with the mob, and he met several soldiers like Joe Farola, and he really admired Joe Farola for being very, very intelligent. So Farola was really responsible for organizing all the sports bettors, like including bingo. Like, can you imagine little old ladies sitting there and they're being run by the mob? Like, bingo! Oh, here you go, mob person. I give you half of my $40. Like, it's so funny to me.
I just picture like guys in like suit jackets and cigars just in a casino, like.
Yes. But eventually Eto, who was now using his brother Joseph's name, earned the street name Tokyo Joe. And he really got involved with Vincent Solano, who was coming up through the ranks at the time. And Eto was responsible for turning over $200,000 a week and paying off the Chicago police to the tune of $3,000 a week. This is back in the 80s, guys. That's a shit ton of money.
Yeah,
and so back even in the 60s and 70s, so crazy.
I'll tell you what the inflation rate of that is. $200,000, and I'm going to use 1980 roughly. And it's before then, but 80 to be safe. That is equivalent to $630,868.93 in 2020. A week.
A week.
How many weeks are in a year? How many weeks are in a year?
52 weeks. 52 weeks in a year.
Let's do some math. Holy bejesus. That is $42,805,184.
Jesus.
That's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. Like, wow. Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
And so originally running these number games with the African-American gangs, but found when they were running drugs that they were just too uncontrollable. So he ended up in the Puerto Rican bolito or lottery operation. And so that was the main focus of Elaine's case. And so joining in these types of operations allowed Eto police protection because he was paying them at $3,000 a week.
Right.
And an even protection that if he was raided, nothing would really come of it for himself to be in trouble.
Right. Like they would just, they might end up having some charges brought against them that they wouldn't be anything major, no federal
Look
charges.
the other way.
Yeah, look the other way, maybe get a fine or a slap on the wrist and keep going, So, yeah.
And so this is where Elaine and Eto ended up connecting as Elaine was working sources in that operation.
Right. So she was going through working whoever, people, different people in this organization, this Bolito organization. She was really focusing on it because it's where a lion's share of the money was coming from. And so, so what happens eventually here is Elaine and Eto, they cross paths. And next week, we're going to wrap up our case with how Elaine and Eto actually take down the 80s operation. And make sure to check out Elaine's book, Gun in My Gucci. And the link is in our show notes. So, so we're going to hear a lot about how she turned him, why she was able to do so, what he thought was going to happen to him. So next week is going to be pretty juicy, guys. So it's going to be fun. And then starting in October for our, Halloween time, crazy stuff. And I think we're going to find a couple of things that we're going to do that's going to be Halloweeny, so you guys are going to want to keep following to see what we end up doing. But Colleen, go. You want to talk about it, I know.
October, we're going to be covering Jeffrey Dahmer, guys. Obviously, you guys know I have an obsession with the creepy, weird, and disturbing cases. Jeffrey Dahmer's case is pretty disturbing. Actually, to me, it's quite tame compared to some of the other cannibalism cases. But for a lot of people, that's where they start in these gruesome cases. So we're going to be covering Jeffrey Dahmer. Depending on how things go in this month, Wisconsin just hit its high record of cases yesterday. I may head down to the city and do a little live of where Dahmer's apartment was and around the area where he works. The candy shop he worked at still exists.
Oh my.
And he had a head in that locker, which you're not going to want to miss that conversation.
And I just did an article on another cannibal that was just in the news lately. Joseph Ozenberry, I can't it's a hard name. But anyway, he basically broke into his ex-girlfriend Tammy Jo Blanton's home, killed her, and then ate parts of her brain, her lungs, and another body part I can't remember. And then the police actually found him outside the next morning, just sitting there, who does this? Who kills a person, does all this? And then it's just hi, how are you? I'm here.
Most likely at the end, I'm going to throw in some of the more famous cannibals just because I just really enjoyed talking about them. There's the one from France who he was from, was it Japan or China, where he literally just got away with it because when they extradited him, they didn't have orders that he had to go to prison, just mental health. And he was able to check himself out of the mental institution legally. And so dude killed a girl, ate her over a few days. And then he's out. He's been out for a long time. He does porn now. That's the insanity. But so I'll probably throw in a couple of these crazy people.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Oh, by the way, it's Oberhansley. That's the last name. That's a weird last name. But yeah, I just covered that today over on for our true crime tidbit. So it is on here too. It's on both Facebook and YouTube. But you guys, it's just funny. It just wow, that's hilarious that guy is doing porn now. What what kind of weird, creepy thing is that? Oh yeah, so I ate my girl. I ate a woman, and now I'm doing porn.
He exploits how he got away with it. So like fighting crime, like how would they let him out? It was in the extradition order that he needed to go to mental health, but where they extradited him, that country allows people to check them out of mental health themselves.
That is
So
crazy.
exposed a loophole.
Because like here, I mean, here going to a mental institution is often sometimes worse than ending up in prison for a crime, because if you end up in the mental health system for the criminally insane, there is no like date. Like if you get 10 years, you get 10 years in the prison system. If you get put in the mental institution for the criminally insane, there is no date. They can keep you there indefinitely. And a lot of times they'll keep people there just because it's a paycheck, you know? And we've talked about this before. We've talked about prison reform here in America that we're very passionate about, and, you know, reforming the justice system. So we have talked a lot about that long before, you know, it became a popular subject this year.
We might also have to talk about him and the international serial killers. Just, I think he only killed the one girl, but it was such an interesting how he exposed the justice system loopholes.
Right.
He does porn.
Right.
He does porn.
It is porn. That just who knew? Who knew? I mean, does he bite girls? Is that like the fetishy thing that he bites them?
Like, I think he does do some like bondage.
No.
Right, like horrifying.
No.
Guy who like was posting in forums how he wanted to eat people. Like, it's like that, except for he actually ate somebody.
Oh, that's gross. That's gross. Anyway, guys, so we'll be back next week on Monday, wrapping up this crime of the month, guys, and then we'll be heading into Jeffrey Dahmer, obviously. Friday night, we will not be doing a live broadcast. Tori is going to have a broadcast that she pre-recorded with Kirk Nurmi. She's going to be covering like a 100-year-old case that was a case of wrongful conviction and wrongful death. You know, they were put to capital punishment death. And so she's going to cover that with Kirk and kind of get his stance on all of that. I mean, you know, where Colleen and I and Tori and Christina all stand, that we do believe in the death penalty, but only for specific cases. Kirk, on the other hand, believes that the death penalty should not be, should not happen for anyone. And he actually spent years as a death row, like, attorney trying to get his clients, you know, so that they didn't go to death row. So he did that for many years.
You definitely want to listen to our past interviews with Kirk too, because we've discussed with him the current issue of the death penalty due to drug availability and the humane death of people in this country because of the lack of available medications. And he gives a really good rationale and really help explain it. Because yes, me and Fancy and some of us are for the death penalty in certain cases, but he makes a very good point of why right now we shouldn't until we have a better medication.
Right. And so if you don't know who Kirk Nurmi is, guys, just so you know, he was the lawyer for Jodi Arias. So he's kind of a big deal in that world of craziness, you know, and we covered that case with him as well. We did a 3-part on our Good Wives Guide to True Crime series, and then along with his interview, super good interview. He also has done an interview with us and one of my personal friends, Carlos, who is a prosecuting attorney in California, and they talked on the Golden State Killer case and some of the other things. So, you know, and Epstein, I think Epstein.
Yeah, he talked about
Epstein. Yeah, they talked about Epstein. So, you know, he's done a lot with us, but Tori's going to be doing that. So the girls will be live. So Colleen and Christina and Tori will all be chatting live. That was the woman I was thinking of. She served her boyfriend to guests at a barbecue.
That's horrifying.
Oh, God, that's disgusting. That's totally Hannibal Lecter-ish. Oh. Which is one of my favorite movies, by the way.
Jeffrey Dahmer did that with his neighbors, though, too.
Ew, that's so gross. Can you imagine if that's what you find out you're eating? Ew.
Well, and it's after the fact. Like, they didn't know at the time, and then they find out afterwards that they were served human. Like, you've already digested it. There's nothing you can do.
I still would throw up. I think
we always do, because it's just a visceral reaction. But like, there's not, like, it's in you. There's nothing you can do.
Right. It's already happened, you know. Gosh, it's so crazy. But and Silence of the Lambs and anything about Hannibal Lecter is one of my all-time favorite things that I love to watch. I've watched everything. I did. I loved it. I loved it. I was very upset when they canceled it. It is now on Netflix, by the way. But yes, I did watch that one. I watched The Red Dragon. I watched the original Silence of the Lambs, so yeah, I've watched, totally great. I really liked The Red Dragon. I thought it was really interesting. I liked Ed Norton's character in that. So
that was the pre one, right? I haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah, it's the pre one. Yeah, so I really like that. Yeah, right. I bet those people will never eat meat again. Yes, that is it. I have a friend who has a story that's similar to that. Of course, it wasn't humans, but her grandparents had a farm and they had chickens. And when she was a little girl, one of the chickens got, they cut the head off the chicken and the chicken kept running around. And that was it for her. Like, she never ate meat ever again. Like, that was she saw that and that was the end for her. So same thing.
My friends watched Ghost Ship. And they have that scene where like they're eating like refried beans or something out of a can and it's maggots. That scarred her.
God, yes.
And she can't eat Taco Bell because of it.
It reminds me of what is that? The cannibals that ate themselves like on the trail because they come on, you know what I'm talking about. I know you do.
Yes, I do.
I can't think of it right now. But they were like a family who had to eat the rest of their family, not by choice, but they became cannibals because of the conditions of them traveling. I can't remember it. I don't remember.
Did that too, and their plane crashed in like the middle of the mountains, and they had to resort to eating some of their dead compadres. And that
I would starve to death.
Well, that happened a lot in Soviet Russia because of the Cold War, and I've talked about that before, how families kind of were just forced into having to eat people who were dead and then ended up eating some people who weren't dead. Andrei Chikatilo, I'll be talking about him eventually, because he was a cannibal serial killer who did the same thing. But there was an island actually in Soviet Union. I remember watching a documentary that was so good. It was about
Donner Party. Donner Party. There it is. That's what it is. The Donner Party. That's what I was thinking about. Anyway, go ahead, Colleen.
This island, they would send like the criminals there, and just leave them. There'd be no food on the island, but they would just put them on this island, and they turned cannibal because there was no food. And a bunch of
right.
And then there was the family in Australia. I don't think they were cannibals. They were just inbred, where they just a family continued to inbreed for decades and decades and decades.
Now, do you know why Dahmer ate his victims? Do you know what that was? How that came about?
It was a sense of wanting like control and to physically be with somebody. He wanted to always be with them and them to be with him. So it was more like he wanted to internally possess them.
Wow.
And like, I'll talk about, how emotionally scarred Dahmer was. And to me, he's not the most evil of the cannibalistic killers. He really did have a lot of mental health problems. And I think a lot of it stemmed from brain damage and the abuse and abandonment he suffered as a child and as a teen, because he didn't want to kill the people. He wanted to turn them into a zombie so he could love them forever.
Right. Now, did you ever watch the new movie that came out, My Friend Dahmer? Did you watch that? And what did you think of that?
I enjoyed it. It definitely, I know it upset a lot of people because it wasn't about the killing. It was about his personality in high school and how weird he was. But I don't think it did that great of a job of explaining the true mentality that he was dealing with. I thought they made a lot of jokes about his life and how he was very expressive and tried to be a show off, but he was not liked, and he did have a lot more problems. Like, he was drunk pretty much 24/7 as a teenager. I have the book by Lionel Dahmer, his father, and where he explains things. There's a better movie. I think it's just called Dahmer. That I recommend to people.
I've seen that one too.
And it has one of like the famous actors in it. Dahmer 2002, much better depiction of Jeffrey Dahmer's teenage life and how he got into the actual killing aspect of things. But much better portrayal of how disturbing his mental health really was. I thought My Friend Dahmer was just very tame and made fun of how he acted versus the actual mental illnesses he was suffering.
Right. And it kind of reminds me of okay, I have to look at it to say it right. Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil and Vile. I loved that movie. I thought it was great, but a lot of people were very disappointed in it because it didn't it didn't go into the killings. And but it wasn't that story. That wasn't the story being told. It was Liz's story. That's what was being told, and her struggle to turn this man in that she loved, and was very gentle with her and her child, and so I really liked the movie, and I thought Efron did an amazing job of portraying him. It was shockingly evil and vile, extremely wicked in his portrayal, and I loved Jim Parsons as the attorney.
I did. He was great.
I think I may go watch that again tonight.
I watched it in figures last night, and I was like, Jim Parsons.
I really like him a lot. I think he's come so far from just being the weirdo on
Big Bang Theory.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't think of the name. I was thinking 30 Rock, The Office, all the different ones, but not that one. So
I just think the issue with the My Friend Dahmer was that it wasn't told from a perspective of like Liz's story
specifically, right.
I think it was one of the associates, but Jeffrey Dahmer didn't really have any friends, and it wasn't told directly from that perspective. It was just making fun of Dahmer's social awkwardness versus
I wonder though, because maybe you can look at it this way, and I'm thinking maybe this is what they were coming forward with was that was how he was treated, and that was how things were. So perhaps they're trying to illustrate how he ended up being what he was because of these things. And so maybe it's not making fun of him so much as illustrating how the kids made fun of him and treated him because he was, different, which is something that happens very often. And I always try to give movies the benefit of the doubt, like right now there's a movie out that everyone's talking about, everybody's upset about, but I sat down and watched it just because I wanted to know what the
right. Me and you agreed on this.
Yeah. And I watched the movie, and yes, I understand why people are upset. I totally get it. It is very sexualized. It's extremely, raunchy, and the girls say things that I was just like, oh my God, but then I had to think about the fact that, first of all, it's from a European director and writer, and especially a French writer, which they're a little more risque over there. Things are just a little different. I mean, kids can drink at an early age, sexual activity is a little more open over there. Not saying that any of that is right in any way, shape, or form, but what I took away from it was a totally different message. And I really kind of felt that what the director and the writer were trying to do, maybe not so well, but done, was that they were trying to illustrate that this is a problem.
Yes.
And in the end, the little girl kind of revolted against all of that and went back to just being a little girl,
right. And so, I thought it did a really good job of, it makes you feel uncomfortable. It does, especially at the end. Like, it makes you feel very uncomfortable. But if you look at reality and how true it is, like, I've got, siblings who are those ages, and dancing for kids has become very, very sexualized. And
right, absolutely.
So like as much as that's uncomfortable to watch in a non like music video setting, or reality television show, it's just a fictionalized, portraying.
I think for me it wasn't honest. the dancing that was so it was what these girls said
Yeah.
and talked about. Like they full on talk about things that no 11 and the thing that I thought they did well with this is that they did portray it in the way that these girls were saying these things, but really had no understanding of what they were
Yes.
really saying. And so and that happens, you know, these girls a lot of the times, especially in these other countries, they are, you know, they grow up very fast. And it's I know here in America we like to think that our little girls are little girls forever, but they're not. And they're getting these influences from, you know, there's many times that, you know, girls are 12 and 13 and 11 years old and they're already having sex, and
I
they're
started
influencing
dating my
their
husband at
friends, you
13.
know. Right, but you didn't have sex, thankfully.
No,
So
but I definitely know that those topics do come up at 12, 13
oh,
years old.
absolutely.
And
I was locked in a closet at 13 and told to do something, you know, for, you know, 20 minutes or 10 minutes in heaven or 5 minutes in heaven, whatever the hell it is, you know, and I just stood there with the guy. I was like, you know, but, and there's,
right,
you know,
now they
and the
know. That's the thing. Like back when we, and even when I was younger, like it wasn't as like, what's happening. There was, you don't really know what you're supposed to do until you're, a little bit more exposed to things. But unfortunately now with the media, and social media, what's happening. And at least this movie did a good job of explaining that they don't really know, like, but like you can scroll on Twitter and unfortunately scroll past a porn video and you're like, what?
right.
And you're like, what? And then ads pop up on websites. And so it's
in
like,
a time period where we're dealing with a lot of sex trafficking and missing children is coming to the light. You know, we have at any given time, there's over 800,000 children missing in a year. You know, and that's one of the things we're going to be talking about on our new podcast that will be dropping in October with Todd Matthews from Name Us, you know, and David Middleman, who we introduced the other day, who does some incredible work with DNA. We're going to be talking about all of that, you know, and this topic will probably come up again because it is such a relevant thing right now. And I know that it's a sticky situation. People don't want to think that this is happening to our girls.
It's like sex education in schools. And you're like, I don't want my kids to know about it. I don't want them exposed. But it's like, if you don't expose them to the honest truth, then they're likely to be taken advantage of.
Well, it reminds me of like the parents who don't want condoms in the high schools in the health office. Well, just because you don't have condoms in the office in the health office,
you're not having sex.
They're not going to do it. But they're always like, oh, well, that's promoting it. No, actually, it's promoting that if you're gonna do it, please do it safely. You know,
yes.
and so I've always been a proponent of that. I talked with my girls about sex very early on to, you know, explain to them what was appropriate, what was not appropriate. If somebody does this to you, you know, all these different things, you know, and still, it still doesn't protect all the children. It does. It doesn't. And there's predators everywhere, inside your family, outside your family, family friends,
schools, neighbors. Most rapes and kidnappings occur from neighbors. And so that's why you have those conversations, you know, when your kid's in first grade and they're going to walk to school, you know, stranger danger, don't talk to anybody. Make sure, you know, if you feel, you know, unsafe, you run and scream. And then when you have kids that are preteens, especially for boys, they start having those feelings. You have to talk to them. You know, don't wait and be like, well, yeah, I don't want to have that uncomfortable conversation with my kid. No, it's better to have that uncomfortable conversation and about appropriate behavior before your, 12-year-old kid is having, raging hormones and unexpected sexual feelings, and then starts maybe being a predator to girls. And the girls, if they haven't had that conversation, they don't know what's appropriate or not. And then we're in a very horrifying situation of teenagers in rape, sexual assault, young pregnancy, because they didn't have the education that they needed. And I'm sorry for this infomercial, people. Your safety announcement.
But I mean, it's relevant to what we talk about. Yeah, it is very relevant, and it is something that's happening, you know, in the news right now. And I am glad that it's getting some more of a focus. I wish there was actually more focus on it than there is right now. So while maybe Cuties failed in its in its execution, I really truly believe the message
Yeah.
was a good message and something that they were trying to highlight, something very
Yeah, they did because the controversy about it made more people watch it to see what the hell it was about, and then
and
people have to have these conversations. So
right. And if you're making a judgment because of something your friend said, or because,
a clip.
Molly down the street told you that, oh my God, it's just so terrible. Don't let that be the reason that you do or do not watch the movie. I personally felt the movie was, it was, it was okay. It was not a great movie. I did not think it was, amazing. I did think the message was clear. I did.
Mhm.
And I felt that they tried very hard to do something real, and
It's
maybe
a social
just a little too
commentary.
real. Yeah, yeah. But
So
anyway, guys, we'll be getting into a lot of these things in our upcoming stuff. So you're going to
mhm.
want to keep coming back and tune in Friday night for that interview with Tori and Kirk. And, we'll be back next week with the rest of our crime of the month, and then on to Jeffrey Dahmer. Alrighty, guys, have a good one. Good night.
Yay.